A friend of mine keeps telling me that my home is starting to look like insides of Indigo store. I have no idea what she's talking about. Hi everyone, I'm back! I know it's been a while and I'm definitely out of habit of filming, which sucks because I miss doing that. I just came back, okay, not just, but like about a month ago I came back from my epic vacation in the States. I went to Los Angeles where Sherlock Con took place, and I have 3 videos of my vlogs on my channel, so I'll provide the links down below. I also went to BookCon at New York, and unfortunately I haven't filmed my video, my book haul from BookCon yet, but I will do that shortly. I'm just really behind on life right now, but this is definitely coming. And I also did a lot of reading and I have a lot of books to haul. So I have a lot of videos that I need to film, and honestly, I'm so bad. I'm procrastinating a big time right here, and I know, but I'm trying to keep up with the things. I'm trying to catch up with a lot of stuff which is going on. I'm updating my blog. I did write a lot of reviews for my blog, which is great, and I'm trying to update my Instagram as often as possible. But I actually want to talk to you guys about the books that I have read in the past few weeks. So usually what I do is that I do weekly wrap-ups, and since I think the end of April or beginning of May, I didn't have a chance to actually sit down and do one of those videos. Plus, I made a video of all the books that I want to read before going to BookCon, and I'm going to link that video down below as well because you'll probably want to see what books I had on my TBR. And I did read books within 2 weeks, and that was between May 7th and May 21st. I gave myself 2 weeks to finish up all the books that had been meaning to read for a while, especially the books that I knew I would be seeing the authors of at BookCon. So I definitely was trying my best to finish those books, and I did, but it didn't finish all of them. So as always, I'm not very good with TBRs, and whatever I planned to read things just got away from me. But I did a lot of reading in those 2 weeks, then I went away, and during my vacation obviously I didn't have any time to read at all because it was just packed with stuff to do. And when I came back, I wasn't really much in the reading mood until I kind of started sprinting through books within like a week or so, because I was trying to finish certain books before I started LGBTQIA readathon that was organized by George on YouTube. And I'm going to provide a link to my TBR blog post on my blog, and I'm going to do a special video with my wrap-up for that readathon. But like I said, I planned to finish some books before I started that readathon. So I know it sounds very confusing, so I'm not going to name this video like I usually do, a weekly wrap-up or reading progress. This is going to be somewhat a joint wrap-up for May and June. Basically everything that I read between my last wrap-up and the readathon. And that is roughly, I would say, 2 weeks in May and about 2 weeks in June, so kind of like a month-ish. But since it's May to June, I'm just going to call it May-June wrap-up. Wow, that was a very long and rambly intro. I'm definitely out of practice here. The only reason I'm filming this on the couch is just because I'm not feeling well, and I didn't feel like dislodging that huge pile of books that I have in my regular seat by the bookshelves, and those are just all the books and merch and stuff that I got at BookCon, and I don't even want to touch that pile because it's enormous, and nope. Since I have a lot of books to go through, and I'm not even joking, I have like 9 books or 10 books for my May portion and a couple of more books in June, so honestly just like a shitload of books, and I don't have physical copies for every single one of them, so I'm going to sprint pretty fast through all of them. And the first book that I'm going to talk about is a graphic novel called Fox Bunny Funny by Andy Hartzell. I picked it up randomly on Hoopla or Overdrive because I was searching for books with the fox in the title, as you do. And this one came up. I knew nothing about it. Read the synopsis, which said that there is like a community of foxes and there is one fox that sticks out, blah blah blah. So I started reading it, and it is sort of a black comedy. I don't like black humor. There is a certain, line that I don't like to cross, and this is definitely a bit on the verge of uncomfortable for me. I'm not into black humor. I don't like those type of jokes where someone gets, chopped up or killed or whatever. I gave this graphic novel 2.5 stars. It is mostly black and white in gray, sort of gray color scheme, and it is about a community of foxes, and there is one young fox who secretly wants to be a vegetarian and doesn't want to eat rabbits, and one day he's kind of confronted and he has to kill a rabbit, and then it just... I don't know what to say about it. It was not funny. It was, I assume it was supposed to be like black humor and kind of symbolic in a way that, oh, you're, discovering yourself and you have to be true to yourself, and it doesn't matter what society tells you, etc., etc., but I just didn't find it likable. I think there are better ways to deliver this message, and I just didn't like it, so skip it. Next, I finally finished the audiobook Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I know, it's been months and I'm finally done with it, and I'm so happy about it. I had troubles getting into Heartless. First of all, this is the first book by Marissa Meyer that I read in my life, and perhaps I should have started with Cinder, the Lunar Chronicles, but I did not. I picked up Heartless because there was a lot of hype about it, and I tried reading it as a physical book last year and I failed. I read about 100 pages, and while reading the book it was okay and I kind of enjoyed it, but whenever I put it down I never had an urge to pick it up again. So I decided to switch to an audiobook because audiobooks are very good at kind of being in the background, allowing me to do other stuff while enjoying the book. And if the book is not engaging enough, that's fine as well. So I switched to the audiobook, and it was much better as an audiobook. Rebecca Soler does a good job overall at narrating this book. However, I had a bit of a trouble with her fake British accent. I don't know what was about it or why she decided to pick British accents for Catherine, the main protagonist, and also some other characters in the story, but it just felt too artificial for me. I liked the way she voiced the king. He was super annoying, but that was the purpose, and I liked the way that she voiced the Hatter. The Hatter was my favorite, I'll be honest, and he was great. However, Cheshire, whom I also like as a character in the story, he was on the border with being annoying. Overall, the narration was good. However, the plot, there was just no plot. So the story, I would say, is probably more character-driven than the plot-driven. All the characters were great. The world itself was very good. I really enjoyed it, and I think I enjoyed and kept listening to this audiobook just because of the world. I liked some of the characters better. Like I said, I liked Hatter, I liked Joker. I didn't much care about Catherine. I hated that her name was Pinkerton. That just annoyed the crap out of me. I didn't like the Marquess. I did not like... well, Cheshire was kind of on the border for me. I kind of liked him, but kind of disliked him. I couldn't understand Catherine's relationship with her friend, etc., etc. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of plot holes in the story, and I would say that if I didn't know that Marissa Meyer wrote like 4+2 collections of short stories before writing Heartless, I could have easily assumed that that was a debut novel because it was well written, but just no plot whatsoever. And we all know the way the Queen of Hearts is in the Alice in Wonderland, so there is really no suspense. There is really nothing. I kept expecting the story to have a major, you know, gut-wrenching twist that would kind of turn things around, because I would have preferred for the story to end in a completely different way. Because what she did is that, yes, I understand that this is a fairy tale retelling, but it would have been much better if she took it and ran in a complete different direction with it, but she did not. And at the very end, we have the Queen of Hearts, and she is the way she is in Lewis Carroll novels, and I did not like it. There is another thing which I did not like, and that is, how should I put this? Let's just say revealing that one of the characters might have feelings for the same-sex character at the very end of the novel feels as if you're kind of throwing a bone to the queer community, and do not do that. It was not really necessary, and it did not really change. It did not progress the story. There was nothing behind it. I mean, I'm trying to talk about the book without actually spoiling things, but if you have read the book, you probably know what I'm talking about. And that was both the moment when I said, yes, I thought so. And then this next second I was like rolling my eyes, go like, well, of course it has to come to this. And no, just don't do that. So overall, I would say that probably plot was the weakest point, and the plot was like 2.5 stars, and the narration was much better, like 3.54 stars. Overall, I would say 3.5 stars at the most. I enjoyed it, but it also annoyed me at times, and I just wanted to shake the main protagonist and say, can you just like grow up? Because this is ridiculous, and all the plot twists were kind of predictable as well. But the narration and the world and all those, and the way the author managed to spin around all those characters was delightful. But at the same time, the plot was so bland. Oh my god. It left me really frustrated. Next, I read this book. And oh my god, I freaking loved it. So, This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab, as you know, is the first book in her duology. It has to do with monsters and awesomeness and dystopian/fantasy world. This is a YA story, but it is written with such depth and such variety in themes that it's just wonderful. Probably everyone has already read this book, so I'm not just going to go into much details or give you a summary of the plot. But the things that I loved about this book is, first of all, when I started to read it, I immediately, and this is second book by Victoria Schwab that I have ever read, the first one being Vicious, and I was in love with Vicious. I loved it, and I think it was a very good thing that I started with an adult novel by Victoria. Nothing against young adult, but just like this one could have been an adult novel easily if she added a bit more darkness or a bit more violence to the story. There is enough violence in there, and there is enough gore in there, but it's still on the verge of being young adult. And I give this book 4.5 stars, only because it's not a 5-star rate, just because I wanted this book to be more, like, it was compelling, it was unique in plot, it was very intriguing and captivating and gut-wrenching at times, but I wanted to be more, so even more than this, and only because of that I gave it 4.5 stars. I wish it were a 5-star rate for me, but it wasn't. Nevertheless, I loved it. I read this book in almost like a day. It was a day and a half, and I flew through it. And the moment I started to read this book, I was like, yep, V. Schwab is my spirit animal, and I cannot lie. Because seriously, she's amazing, and I got to meet Victoria Schwab at the book con. Oh my god, she's such a sweetheart, and both her and Susan Dennard were at the same booth, and I thought I would cry because two of my favorite authors were at the same table signing their books, and I was like, I don't even know whom to talk to first. Yeah, so anyway, I love this book. I do have a written review on my blog. Reviews to all of the books that I wrote the reviews for. I'm sorry, I'm just repeating myself a lot, but anyway, all of those links will be down below. So yeah, love this book. If you love YA, weird stuff, monsters, and also protagonists that, like, say, good characters who are also bad and bad characters who are also good, you will love this book. Next, I read 4 books which were all on Kindle. 2 of them were actually novellas and 2 were novels, and they were all for specific reviews. 3 books were by my favorite indie author, R.A. Steffan. She writes a very compelling fantasy menage-a-trois romance novels, and I've been working with her for a very long time, and she's graceful enough to provide me with free Kindle copies of all of her books. So I read The Lion Mistress, book number 1 in her new cycle, which is a spin-off of her The Horse Mistress series. I read book number 1, and then I read the prequel, which was a novella, and just being on the roll, I wanted to get back into the world and read about the characters in her original series, so I reread the Horse Mistress prequel. She doesn't have names for all parts of her books. She just calls them like the Horse Mistress book 1, 2, 3, and 4. So those were the Lion Mistress books 0 and 1, and also the Horse Mistress book 0. I post all of my reviews of her books on Goodreads and also Amazon. I'm going to provide the links down below. Just please be aware that those books contain mature content in case you are underage. And yes, I gave all of her books 4 stars because I love her writing and I love the way she portrays her characters, so yay! Another book that I received for review was an art copy of another romance novel, Gazes Into You, and that is by Alex Jane. This is also a mature novel. I was not as impressed by it as I expected myself to be, and I gave it only 3 stars. I'll provide a link to my Goodreads review as well, but once again, it is queer and also mature in content, so please be aware. And next, I got to Caraval by Stephanie Garber. And oh boy, I have a lot to say about this one. So let me start by saying that I got this book from the library in a hardback edition, but I didn't have time to read it, so I had to return it. And then I realized that Rebecca Soler, who narrated the whole Luna Chronicle series, and also Heartless by Marissa Meyer, she also narrated this book by Stephanie Garber. So I decided to pick it up as an audiobook, and I'm very glad that I did because, first of all, it was much easier to swallow as an audiobook as opposed to the physical copy. And I could, do some stuff at work or at home and listen to it. But at the same time, the narration was so similar to Heartless in many ways that it annoyed the crap out of me. I would say that it was not the best narration by Rebecca Soler. I think I gave it overall of 3 stars for narration itself. But the plot, oh my freaking god, the plot. So if you haven't read this book, this is a YA fantasy novel. I think it's going to be a duology or maybe trilogy. I'm not sure, but when I picked this book up, I thought it was a standalone, and I was really surprised when I found out that there's going to be a sequel. This is a story about 2 sisters, Scarlet and Donatella, who live with their rather abusive and strict father. So their father wants to marry them off, and But Scarlet, one of the sisters, has always been obsessed by this mysterious circus which is called Caraval, and by the master of the circus whose name is Legend. So she always wanted to see Caraval in action, and when one day she finds way to kind of go on an adventure with her sister, and she gets sucked into Caraval and everything that is happening there. And it's not just carnival or circus, it is a very dangerous game. I had a lot of problems with this book, and I don't even know where to start. I did write a review of this book on my blog, but I just want to say that the first thing that comes to my mind is that the idea of this book was absolutely great. The idea that there are two sisters who are close enough, and one sister gets sucked into this Caraval, and another sister goes on an adventure, basically on a quest to save her. There is a lot of weird stuff happening in Caraval. There are a lot of intriguing and compelling young men that, you know, appear in her way. But the problem that I had with this book was, first of all, that everything felt like a cliche. Overall, Caraval reads more like a romance novel as opposed to a fantasy one. It is YA, so there is no adult themes or anything like that, but Scarlet is so fixated on her obsession with the first man that she finds, with Legend himself, and then with this guy whom she meets on her quest. And everything that is happening there doesn't really make much sense, because it has to feel as if it's some sort of quest where she has to, you know, overcome some difficulties to find her sister, but at the same time, it just all feels very bland. All the characters are very two-dimensional. There is really not much explanation going on. There are a lot of plot holes. Everything is very, very cliched. I mean, whenever the main protagonist, like this guy that she was kind of falling in love with, would take off his shirt and she would look at his muscled back and go and be overcome with passion. I'm like, dude, what the heck am I reading here? It's just like, it was so annoying. I kept rolling my eyes whenever I was listening to those moments, and even though I like the idea and I like the world, the execution was really bad. You could tell that this is a debut novel, and it felt like a composition of different things, and I never felt as a whole thing, a fully fleshed out world. Secondly, I think the author was trying really hard to make everyone a goodie, and there was a villain, but never like a villain, or, you know, like a goody. Everyone was like, oh, he's bad, like a bad boy type of personality, but he's good inside. And oh my god, so much crap. Seriously, Rebecca Soler did a good job. I'm not going to say anything against her. Her narration was good. However, the novel lacked a lot of things. And the main thing that I had at the very end that kind of, you know, made this book almost a 2-star read for me. I think I gave it like 2.5 stars in Goodreads just because I was feeling generous. But at the very end, when you reach that high point, when Scarlet finally finds Donatella, and there is like a big revelation, and there is some big thing that happens, nobody can get over it in seconds. You cannot treat this like that. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but I'm just going to say, if something big, like that big, happens in a story, you do not get over it. You do not just go off continuing with your life as it is. Scarlet was okay. I wouldn't call her the character that I liked. I did not dislike her a lot, but she was okay. Donatella, on the other hand, was super annoying. I hated her, and I couldn't understand why Scarlet was so obsessed with helping the sister that never really supported her. Also, I felt that the image of the father was very much like the Bluebeard in, you know, that fairy tale, fantasy fairy tale. He was a very, like, a cliche person. Then the only character that I liked was Dante, but he was only used as some sort of, like, another love interest, a triangle thing, but I liked him. So I don't know, I'm really disappointed in this book. It was definitely overhyped, including overhyped on BookTube, but it was a very big disappointment for me. And when at the very end of this audiobook there was an interview with Stephanie Garber, that absolutely killed me. I'm not going to say anything, but my opinion of this book just kind of plummeted. And yeah, anyway, so we're going to get a second book in the series, or a sequel, or a second book in duology. I have no idea whether it is a duology or trilogy or what the heck it is, but we're going to get another book in the series, and it's going to be from Donatella's point of view. So unless Rebecca Soler narrates that one as well, I might pick it up as an audiobook, but otherwise, heck no. It's definitely a skip it book for me, and if it weren't an audiobook, I would have probably thrown it away out of my window or went back to Indigo and demanded my money back, because that was just bad. After being thoroughly annoyed by Stephanie Garber's Caraval, I wanted to read something else, but I still wanted to read one of the books that I hoped to meet one of the authors at BookCon, so I randomly picked up Leigh Bardugo's Shadow and Bone. So Shadow and Bone, as you know, is a debut novel by Leigh Bardugo that is the first book in her Shadow and Bone, or the Grisha trilogy, and it is a YA fantasy retelling set somewhat in a world that resembles Imperial Russia. Let's just say that after reading The Crown's Game by Evelyn Skye, I was very apprehensive about this book. First of all, because I don't really trust anyone with no knowledge of Russian history or Russian language or anything about Russia to talk about the country or to set a world that basically resembles Russia. So I was very apprehensive. The Crown's Game, I had a lot of thoughts on The Crown's Game, and I was really critical about The Crown's Game in my review. However, I think that The Crown's Game was very different from this book. Obviously, it's written by a different author, but even the whole premise was different. Leigh Bardugo, God bless her soul, does not claim to know anything about Russia. Thank goodness. She also said that, I think I read it in her preview or afterward, that she wanted to base something very loosely on Russian history, and this is what she did, and she did a pretty good job with it. There are some mistakes in the novel, as you do, because you cannot just take the language that you do not know and use Google Translator. I'm sorry, but we've all been there. I'm sure that if you ever happen to read a book that uses words in your native tongue, I'm pretty sure 99% of the time you can find mistakes in it. Anyway, I digress. So what I wanted to say is that this is a very good debut novel. It is light, it is not heavy in prose, it is very well action-packed, and this is something that I do appreciate, because it is very important to create a fantasy world, yes, but also if the book is not action-packed, which is a problem of The Crown's Game, let's be honest. This one is very action-packed. Stuff starts happening almost from the first chapter, which is great, but there are a lot of cliches in this book, and not about the Russian culture, but about that as well, because let's just say nobody eats herring for breakfast. This is just ridiculous. Once again, I digress. But I wrote a long, like a more detailed review of this book on my blog. I'm going to provide it down below as well. I did enjoy it. However, no matter what mistakes Leigh Bardugo makes in this book, no matter how cliched or how, I would say, heavily inspired by Anastasia, whatever, was it Disney or was it Warner's Brothers? I don't remember, was it Disney or DreamWorks? Okay, one of those. Remember that one? Anastasia, movie back from the whatever 90s, 2000s. It is a glorified Hollywood-like version of the Imperial Russia, which is hilarious on one hand, kind of sad on the other, but the world itself is pretty cool. I enjoyed reading this book, and I'm definitely going to be reading the rest of the books in the series. However, I still don't get it why people love it so much, because it is a debut novel. Another thing that I want to mention is that while being at BookCon, unfortunately I did not manage to meet Leigh Bardugo, but I did meet other lovely fans there, and a couple of people told me when I mentioned that I started reading this trilogy, they told me that Leigh Bardugo's writing got so much better in later books, and this is one of the reasons actually why instead of picking up The Six of Crows, I picked this one up. I decided to go in the kind of timeline of publication just to start with this trilogy to see how Leigh's writing was back then, and I do not regret it. It's kind of a light read, but it's also super fun. I really enjoyed both main characters, and even though the Darkling is such a stereotypical bad boy trope, it's just ridiculous, but he's also lovely, and I hope everything will kind of work out. But no spoilers, I don't want to know anything. But yeah, I read this first book, I gave it 3 stars. It is a very solid 3-star read, and I hope to get to other books very soon. Next, I read another graphic novel that I randomly picked up from Hoopla, and I have seen this graphic novel before. As a matter of fact, I even purchased a copy of it to my friend in Germany, and that is the Ladykiller volume number 1. That is unfortunately the only volume that has come out so far, and it is pretty sad because I really enjoyed it. It is a story set in the 50s, and it depicts a very typical housewife, a picture-perfect family lady, but she's secretly an assassin. And it has a very old, 50s, 60s, almost James Bond type of feel. Remember those James Bond movies before? I think Sean Connery was the very first one who played James Bond, and there was a different feeling to those movies. They were so classy, so old school. Action was maybe a bit too, unrealistic, but it just had a very, very nice feel about it. And Ladykiller is actually pretty cool. It is graphic in the sense that there is blood, there is violence, but at the same time, I just loved how much tongue-in-cheek was there, because this lady would be like baking pies and at the same time just going somewhere with a big kitchen knife to kill them. I loved it. Unfortunately, there were only 5 issues and only 1 volume, and I hope they will make more, but I have no idea. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I think we're somewhat 2/3 through this wrap-up. Can you believe that? Yes, I have more books to talk about. Next, I finally decided to start with this series, and that is Cinder, The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. After finishing Heartless, I really wanted to start the Lunar Chronicles series because everyone was telling me that it's a great series. It is sci-fi, YA, fairy tale retellings, and very imaginative, and that I would really enjoy those books. I kept hearing very good things about these books, but after kind of feeling let down by Heartless, I was very apprehensive. So I decided to go by my favorite route whenever I feel I'm not sure whether I will like this book or not. And especially since Heartless had this kind of like a slow start, I decided to go with audiobooks. So I got this one as an audiobook, once again narrated by Rebecca Soler, and I started listening to it. This book definitely has a very slow start, but then when the action picked up, I started to enjoy it more. I think overall I gave this book 3.5 stars. It's slightly higher than 3 stars, but it's definitely not a 4-star read for me. Cinder, as you know, is a retelling of Cinderella. I like the idea of having the main female protagonist, who is not only just a cyborg, but she's also a mechanic. And I liked how she was so, definitely not a damsel in distress. And the Prince Kai is, on the other hand, was somewhat, weak-willed. Maybe it's my reading into the story, but this is how I saw it. However, I still had a lot of problems with it because I felt that there were a lot of tropes, and even though the world itself is very interesting, and I really enjoyed how Marissa Meyer went into this book already anticipating what's going to happen at the end of the series, because she laid down a lot of, groundwork for books 2, 3, and 4. And I have not read the whole series yet, but I know the titles of all books, which kind of gives away what all of those books will be, focused on. And that's why when I think about this book and I go like, oh man, but she has already introduced in this book the character that will be in the last book, which is awesome. However, there were still a lot of two-dimensional characters, and some things that happened in this book were just a bit simplistic for me, but I still enjoyed it. It was a fairly good read, so I gave it 3.5 stars. I also have a full review of this book on my blog, and I'm going to link it down below. I'm not being lazy, but I just don't feel like repeating myself. I'm sorry. Plus, everyone and their grandmother read these books. And I'm probably the only one that haven't finished the series yet, so bear with me. And the last book before going on vacation to LA was Windwitch, and that is by Susan Dennard, and this is book number 2 in her series. When I met Susan at BookCon, I said, oh my god, Susan, you did something in this book. There was this big, huge twist in this book that I did not see coming. And she said, you know what? A lot of people tell me that they did not see it coming, but it was all there in book number 1. And I was like, where? Where? But yeah, so this was one of my most anticipated books of 2017. I had this book pre-ordered, but then I went into a bookstore in January and I saw it and I purchased it. And I started reading it right away, but I did not finish it because I got to that big revelation thing almost at the very end of the book, like 60 pages before the end. I just couldn't handle it. I had to put this book down, and I put it down for several months because I just couldn't get over that little thing. Okay, not little, big thing that happened there. And then I was like, okay, fuck it all. I need to read this book before I go to BookCon. Otherwise, I go there and everyone would be like, oh, so have you read Windwitch? Do you know what happens to that person? And be like, fuck, you just spoiled the whole thing for me. So anyway, I decided to finish it. And just to kind of, get over this little hiccup in my reading process, I went back a couple of dozen pages and I finished the last 100 pages or so in one go, and I freaking loved it. I think Susan Dennard as well as Victoria Schwab are going to be my auto-buy authors forever and ever. This is an amazing YA fantasy series, and Susan has confirmed to me that it's going to have to be like 5 books in the series, which immediately made me, wonder what other books, like what other titles there might be, because we know that the 3rd book would be Bloodwitch, and I'm also guessing Voidwitch and Threadwitch, but do not quote me on that. That's just me guessing. But yeah, I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars, no reservations here. I would love to reread it again and again and again and again. Same goes for the Truthwitch, and I cannot even tell whom I like more right now in the series, because in book number 1 I had a bit of problems with both main female protagonists, not because I didn't like them, but just because I felt that they could have been fleshed out a bit more. But in this book there is more character development and there is more stuff happening, especially when it comes to Bloodwitch, that. I just loved it. I loved all of it. everything, every single page. I loved it. It's such a wonderful book. I cannot praise it high enough. Loved it. Next, I went on vacation, LA, New York, like I mentioned before. Didn't do much reading. I listened to an audiobook for a bit, but I did not finish it until I came back, and that was obviously Scarlet by Marissa Meyer, and that is book number 2 in her The Lunar Chronicle series. Once again, narrated by Rebecca Soler, and I enjoyed Scarlet way more than I enjoyed Cinder. I think partially because I'm not very keen on Cinderella's story, and I have always liked the Little Red Riding Hood, especially when there is some sort of retelling in which the main protagonist is not as weak as she is in the fairy tale. And I really liked Scarlet. She is fierce. She's very, very fierce, and she's badass, and she's very, you know, I think she even has like anger management issues, because honestly she's just so prone to reacting, which is fabulous. And then there is Wolf, who is also a very good character. I did enjoy everything, and I think the fact that Marissa tied this book with Cinder and the way she did it was very, very well done, because what I'm afraid what would happen in this series is that you would get Cinder in the book number 1, and then she would be off on some other adventure, and then you will start reading book number 2, and we'll have like the whole new set of characters, and nobody would ever mention Cinder again until whatever the very end. But it was not the case. Actually, this book is very heavy, has very heavy presence of Cinder and her friends, etc., etc. So it's very well connected with book number 1, which is great, and I did enjoy it much more. However, in terms of narration, because I also listened to it as an audiobook, Rebecca Soler does a passable French accent. I'm not sure it was strictly necessary, but I don't know, I felt that the narration was kind of not as good as Cinder in some ways, or maybe on par. Hard to say, but I still enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars, still not a 4-star read for me, but still very enjoyable, and I did enjoy Scarlet as a character way more than Cinder. Just saying. Next, I read a book on my Kindle, and that was Peter Darling by Austin Chant, and that was one of the recommendations by Cece for the June Pride Month. That was a book that I did not know I needed in my life, because it is sort of like a sequel to Peter Pan, when Peter Pan is an adult and also transgender. And believe me, it may sound weird, but the story works, and it's pretty well written for an indie/debut novel, and I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I still need to write my review, but I really enjoyed this book. I wish I had a physical copy, but unfortunately I had to purchase it on Kindle. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. If you are interested in reading sort of like an adult sequel to Peter Pan with queer characters and some dark themes as well, please check this one out. I'll provide the link down below. And the last, but definitely not least, can you believe it? We're at the last stretch of this wrap-up. This is the last book. Get ready. And this is Duistak by Carson Ellis. I don't know, I just did like a German accent. But this is a picture book that I saw at Indigo, and I really wanted to check it out, so I got it from the library. And this is a picture book for kids written in completely fictional, imaginary language. Yay! So I don't know if you can see it. There is barely any text here, because it is a picture book. But it is a story about 2 insects that grow this plant and turn it into a tree house. And then a big spider comes and wrecks it over. And then there is a bird, etc. So, like my friend pointed out, why would you read a book, or why would you write a book written in fictional language, especially for kids? But I personally think that it's a great idea, because it shows that you don't really need to know the language to understand what's going on. Plus, you you can figure it out as you read what those characters are talking about, and I absolutely adored it. I thought it was a great idea. I loved it. I loved the illustrations. It reminded me of one very old, I think, Bulgarian book that I read as a kid, which was about a ladybug, and I loved that book. And the characters and the art itself is very reminiscent of that book. So it brought a lot of childhood memories for me, and I did enjoy it, so I gave it 4 stars. Okay, yes, we are done, finally. Oh my god, I cannot believe I finally filmed this video. I'm so happy. I meant to film it before going on vacation, but it just didn't happen. And then I came back and I never had time, and finally I'm done. I know, that's a lot of books, and I have like an hour of footage. I don't know what I'm going to be doing with that. Maybe I'll have to split it into 2 parts. Who knows? But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye! Oh my god. Why is it like whenever I start filming, my nose gets super itchy? It's annoying. Anyway, I enjoy sitting here. My couch is my favorite place, and I love this pillow. This is like my favorite pillow from Indigo, and this mug is also from Indigo. That's the joke at the beginning of this video, and I'm talking about random stuff again. Anyway, it's blah 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 blah. It is a long weekend here in Canada, so happy Canada Day, happy 150th. And apparently I keep choking on my saliva. Well done.